Akane Banashi, written by Yuki Suenaga, illustrated by Takamasa Moe, and overseen by Keiki Hayashia, is a manga serialized in Shounen Jump. However, being one of those Shounen Jump series that doesn't revolve around some sort of physical contests, its overall presence seems relatively small in comparison to its magazine mates. However, it consistently ranks in the top 10 weekly and often gets heaps of praise from other mangaka. Even Mr. One Piece himself, Eiichiro Oda, said,
"That's pretty good."
And Akane Banashi is really good. And there's a litany of reasons why Akane Banashi is such an effortlessly enjoyable manga for me. The extremely well executed art style and designs give every character a grounded and unique look that contrasts well with the simplistic caricatures of old-timey people and places portrayed within the performances, which can flow seamlessly into highly detailed, expressive, and evocative illustrations that elevate not only the story of Akane Banashi, but the stories within the mini Rakugo performances as well. The focus on a performative art form that the story does a very good job at exploring, putting on display the passion, various means of expressions, and the different reasonings, meanings, and values one may have for engaging with art. It also brings awareness to a traditional form of performative art that's relevance and popularity is slowly waning in the modern age, acting as a reminder to the people of Japan, an introduction to those outside, and a lesson on the deep history, culture, and inner workings of Rakugo to all. The way these aspects are woven into the narrative makes every performance engaging and a real page-turner. However, the characters are what stand above all. From the gentle and warm-hearted Shinta to the intimidating and indomitable Isho. Every character, big or small, protagonist or antagonist, is enjoyable to watch, except for that one who I can't stand, but you know what? Fair enough, that's probably a me problem. Moving on. And no character is more enjoyable to watch than the Akane of said Banashi. She is fearless, passionate, strong-willed, skilled, and very goofy. Yeah, that's a good punchy boy right there. So, with all these things going in Akane Banashi's favor, it's no wonder that I got hooked on it. Something that really stood out to me while reading was the quality support and teaching that Akane receives from those around her. The wonderful support and teachings are some of the most wholesome and realistic portrayals I've seen in manga, and are an important aspect that drives the story forward, and are just something that I really appreciate being a part of. You see, Akane is talented, but I wouldn't say she's inherently more gifted than anyone else. A lot of her skills and abilities that supersede her peers come from the fact that before she even officially entered the world of Rakugo, she had a lengthy period of high-quality training and high-quality inspiration.
I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Both of which burn the fundamentals of how to perform Rakugo into her very being. That overwhelming technical skill allowed Akane to kind of just brute force her way through certain scenarios, but left her severely lacking in other areas. Thus, enter the Arakawa brothers.
No, not you.
I made a video about Ichigo from Bleach. And in that video, I mentioned how Ichigo was often left in the dark or given vague descriptions of what to do during training, and was often forced to kind of just stumble around into finding the answer. I then said that there is definitely value in figuring things out and coming to answers on your own, but essentially, Ichigo definitely could have benefited from more guidance. Now, I believe that was definitely a stylistic choice, and often there are genuine reasons why Ichigo's training was the way that it was. So I don't draw this comparison to put Bleach down or say that it was bad writing or any nonsense like that. However, Akane Banashi expertly executes the teaching style where a student is allowed to come to their own conclusions in a realistic way by providing Akane with something that poor Ichigo rarely, if ever, had: a model. So let's start with Kyoji. Kyoji is the first of the brothers to take Akane under his wing. He begins to teach her the basics of being a Zenza, and the basics of being a Zenza, well, equate to basically doing household chores. And of course, Akane, being the headstrong, passionate, and having her beliefs about Rakugo low-key being the Shishio model.
If you're strong, you live, and if you're weak, you die.
She can't see the value in doing chores in relation to performing Rakugo. Kyoji tries to explain the value of it, but Akane kinda just sweeps it under the rug when the other headliner allows her to be the opener for the show, allowing her to skip out on doing her chores. However, her disinterest and failure to grasp the value of these Zinza duties immediately bites her in the butt. Akane gives a great and amazingly skilled performance to a modest, at best, crowd reaction. Akane, now looking like Gengar came and hit her with Confuse Ray, believes that the lack of crowd reaction is a sign that she needs to improve her skills. But once again, she's simply missed the point, and Kyoji calls her on it. He asks her about the crowd and what they were like, and if she did anything to cater her performance to them. And with the answer obviously being no, he calls her performance selfish, likening it to throwing a really fast pitch that's always outside of the strike zone. Impressive, but ineffective. So, Akane has been given a lot of information to work with. The Zinza chores, the failed performance, the question of did she adapt to the audience, and the idea of being selfish. Now, it's time to take that information and learn from it. So, Kyoji puts her to work. Get a bar? I think that's illegal. During her time working at the bar, Umi, Akane recognizes her folly as she dives headfirst into the shallow end of the pool, being too forceful and not actually taking into consideration what the customers actually want. But she doesn't really know how to fix it. And now, here comes the model. Akane is able to watch and learn from Miku, an individual who has the art of catering to others down pat. Alongside being able to watch Miku in action, Miku also gives Akane the advice to observe the customers before going full force. Because everyone wants to feel special and taken care of. So if she wants people to enjoy her performance, she needs to know what those people enjoy. Akane is then immediately given the opportunity to put these ideas to the test. As a non-Japanese speaking customer arrives, this forces Akane to slow down, observe, consider, and then attend to the customer's needs, all the while incorporating Rakugo into her customer service. Everything has finally clicked for her. See, what Kyoji was trying to teach Akane, and what the whole point of Zinza chores is to teach you how to take care of someone, to learn how to give someone what they need without having to be asked. This is also known as kibataraki. Akane was so focused on performing what she wanted in the way that she wanted that she didn't even consider what that meant for the audience that she was performing for. The audience that she had performed for was primarily elderly individuals, and she was only concerned with throwing fastballs. Kyoji had her work at Umi so that she could come to understand the value and process of employing kibataraki, as well as come up with an answer to the problem that she faced in her previous performance. Kyoji sets her up with a performance at a retirement home, the perfect opportunity for a salty run back. And immediately, it's obvious the difference in Akane. She's considerate of the audience's time and their effort to simply be there, and she just wishes that they enjoy the show. She takes the stage and starts by performing makura to feel them out and to test the waters. She uses techniques learned from Miku to engage individual audience members, and when she starts to perform, it's so much slower and well paced out. This is what Kyoji wanted her to learn. However, it doesn't stop there. Akane's slow performance begins to pick up speed, to the point where it's being performed at the same speed as her previously failed performance, the speed and style that Akane is best at. Yet, this time, the crowd has come along for the ride. Akane remembers a conversation that she had with Miku where they said that delighting the customers is important, but so is serving food that you can be proud of. So, through her experiences, Akane was guided towards learning Kibataraki, but also was given the freedom to come up with her own way of incorporating it, taking into consideration the needs of the audience and the pride of her art. Kibataraki has now been incorporated into who Akane is as a performer. Then comes Koguma. Koguma is enlisted by Akane to assist with her performance for the Karaku Cup. As a condition for entering the competition, Master Shiguma has told Akane that she must enter and win with the story of Jugamu. So, to get a feel for where Akane is at, Koguma requests to watch her perform the story, and upon viewing it, he acknowledges that it's a good performance, but just believes Jugamu is not a good story for a competition. It's too simple and too well known, so it will be difficult to impress anyone with it. However, because Akane literally has no choice, Koguma gives two pieces of advice. First, research the story, and second, when she says Jugamu's name, it only comes out as sounds. Right after receiving this advice, Akane is given the opportunity to watch Koguma perform. Knowing Akane is watching, he chooses a story specifically to illustrate the point that he's trying to teach her, the model. Koguma gives a performance told almost entirely through narration instead of character dialogue, and then provides a wealth of background information that gives the audience greater context and understanding about the story. Koguma is a master of historical literature, and he does in-depth and exhaustive research on the history and surroundings of the stories that he performs. The knowledge he finds allows him to have a greater understanding of the story and thus provide a greater performance. Akane, now inspired by his advice and examples, heads off to learn as much as she can about Jugamu. The lesson that Koguma wanted to impart on Akane was that knowledge is a powerful tool, and there are many ways that having more information and context can have unforeseen benefits that may help her give a greater or more specialized performance. This lesson flowing perfectly into the overall lesson that Master Shiguma wanted to teach Akane by forcing her to perform Jugamu. Perspective. Being able to recite a story is great. Being skilled at performing is even better, but without understanding the feelings and emotions of the characters and themes of the story, the performance will be lacking in emotional depth. By researching and coming to understand the feelings portrayed in Jugamu, Akane is able to add emotional weight to her performance, elevating a simple and well-known beginner-level story into something far greater, allowing her to clear the competition easily and win the Karaku Cup. With these two examples, we're able to see a pattern. Akane is presented with a problem that her great fundamental skills simply cannot overcome. She is given an idea, hint, or concept that addresses the core of her issue. A model or experience is then provided. Akane is then given the time to take in the information of the concepts, flaws, and models, and then think them over, to draw her own conclusions about how to incorporate what she's learned into her skill set. It's like putting together a puzzle. She's given the bigger picture, but she must put the pieces of the puzzle together herself. This pattern is pretty consistent throughout the story, as many different individuals come along to add to Akane's growth. Karashi, even though he considers them to be rivals, sees Akane struggling to listen in on the performances while doing her Zenza chores. So, he tells her about background listening, giving her an example of playing games during class. Then she immediately can practice it during her Zenza training, with all the others as a model. Then she masters it to the point where she's able to take a bullying session while focusing on the performance on stage. When attempting to learn the story Fetching Tea from Urara, Akane tries to perform it in the same way and style that she did, but Urara laughs at her performance, telling her that the story doesn't suit her at all, even though she's the one that picked that story for Akane. She then gives Akane the advice to go on a date to get experience, and through this date, she is able to learn what Urara wanted to teach her: approach. She doesn't have to perform the story in the same way that Urara did, or try to match some idea of what the story is supposed to be. She can decide how she wants to do things and use her own strengths and experiences to fit the story to herself, allowing her to give a hilarious performance that is unique to herself. Maikeru, seeing the issue that Akane doesn't really understand herself as a performer, decides to teach her a story for an upcoming competition. But he first teaches her about nin, the attributes and style categories that a performer and story falls under.
10. 念オーラを体の周囲に留める技
which is not to be confused with nin, but nin is totally nin. Then he gives her the option of 3 stories to learn. One that he believes fits her nin category, one that is good for a competition, and a story that would be more personal to her. That story being one that her father performed. There is no wrong choice, as Maikeru himself says that performing outside of your nin can work well, and only she as the performer can make the choice the correct one. So she chooses her father's story, and through this choice, she is able to develop skills outside of her comfort zone. This pattern of learning is even playing out right now in the most recent arcs, and I love it. I love how grounded and realistic it feels to, first of all, have a character that genuinely needs to learn things, and then second of all, to have the teachers who are genuinely good at giving the right amount of information and guidance, and not forcing their students to pull miracles out of nowhere. It's also enjoyable from the perspective of the reader because I too can try to figure out the lessons that Akane is supposed to learn, and I can learn alongside her. And even better, these lessons learned are not just one-offs or some special move that she can pull out or spam. The lessons she learns fundamentally change her mindset and help her to grow as a person. Since she is allowed to come to her own conclusions, the lessons she learns are not just an imitation of a master, but a true extension of herself. As a result, you can see her using the things she learned all throughout the story. The concept of is learned so early that by the time Akane is using it at the Ryuraku Cup to metaphorically cool down her audience, I had low-key forgotten about it, which made it hit so much harder when the little flashback image of Kyoji appeared. And I may have teared up a little bit, but that's neither here nor there. But the surprise of seeing Kibataraki appear and the realization that Akane had really learned something and used it both efficiently and effectively made me feel a rush of excitement and kind of pride in both Akane and Kyoji, and even Koguma to a certain degree. It's almost like the story gave me exactly what I wanted without
Jesus Christ.
Kibataraki. Even the lessons learned from Koguma allowed Akane to perform her father's story. The story, Changing Times, was outside of her nin. See, Akane is more of an enhancer where her father is more of a conjurer, maybe even a specialist. But even beyond that, Changing Times is just so far outside of her experience and understanding. So, what does she do? She studies. She tries to learn more about her father from all of the individuals that he interacted with, and that leads her to her mother and an imaginary conversation with her father. The emotional depth that she was able to find through research allowed her to be acknowledged by the actual Rakugo judges. Akane Banashi is great at depicting the relationship between a teacher and student. This framework that allows Akane to draw her own conclusions and find her own answers is not just a plot device that creates conflict. It's a legit necessity due to the type of person that Akane is. If she were to be told specifically what to learn, she would go for it in a very straightforward manner from a single direction. And whatever answers she would come to would probably be very shallow, if she could even learn the lesson at all. But because she agonized and struggled, she came to a great conclusion. That hard work and willingness to learn is in part what inspires people to support her. And the amount of support Akane receives is massive. There are those who play an active role as teachers, such as the Arakawa brothers. But there are also many individuals who act as supporters, individuals who endorse, co-sign, or help push Akane towards her goals. Much like squares and rectangles, a teacher is always a supporter, but a supporter isn't necessarily a teacher. The one who fulfills both of those roles the best is none other than Master Shiguma. Shiguma, and realistically everyone connected to the Shiguma branch of the Arakawas, carry a lot of baggage. The shadow of the infamous expulsion event looms heavily over all of them and low-key traumatized them all. Shinta Arakawa's untimely and pretty undeserved excommunication from the Church of Isho left a scar on Shiguma that he believes is of his own making. With his worth as a master in question and a fear of events repeating themselves, Shiguma ceased taking on new apprentices. Until Akane, the daughter of his expelled apprentice, shows up on his doorstep begging for his tutelage through frustrated and impassioned tears. Shiguma choosing to take Akane on as a pupil is no small decision. Outside of Akane and possibly her mother, Shiguma took the expulsion of Shinta the hardest. The bond between master and pupil is not as simple as just teacher and student. The master and pupil relationship is stated to be a bond that is equivalent to that of family. So for Shiguma, he doesn't just feel like he failed a student, he feels like he failed his son. And now, here's what is ostensibly his granddaughter asking him to overcome his doubt, trepidation, and trauma to give it another go. But he does. For 6 years, this man taught Akane. He drilled into her the basics of performing, which allowed for her fundamentals to be at the level of a professional. But beyond Rakugo, he also showed her many aspects of life and the human condition through allowing her to experience many types of people and situations. These experiences serving as an immaculate foundation for which all of her future growth could be built upon. Shiguma is the first and probably greatest teacher she will ever have. However, when Akane officially became part of the school, Shiguma took much more of a backseat role, allowing the Arakawa brothers to take over, as well as providing space for Akane to progress to the next steps of her Rakugo training, leaving the nest to learn from others. Shiguma took the role of a supporter, providing occasional wisdom or counsel, subtle nudges in the right direction, and all of the love, care, and protection of a second father. So right now, he kind of functions as a bridge between teacher and supporter. However, one who more completely fits the role of supporter is Iwa, who coincidentally is actually a teacher. Iwa is one of Akane's high school teachers and also functioned as her career guidance counselor. Initially, she is completely unsupportive, coincidentally facing a very similar situation to Shiguma, where seeing one of her students' dreams crushed caused her to take a certain amount of responsibility for it. Now having a fear of a student like Akane having her dreams crushed and being left weary. However, the passion, dedication, and skill Iwa sees while watching Akane's performance brings her around to fully supporting her goals. From then on, she is forever in Akane's corner. She attends her performances, she tries to be positive and encouraging, and she dives headfirst into helping Akane research for Jugamu. However, Iwa's first and biggest act of support is introducing Akane to the Karaku Cup as a way to get Akane some exposure. This alone is one of the most impactful moments of the story, and its effects ripple outward to this day, and set up events and opportunities for Akane to grow. Most importantly, she would get a chance to ask Isho the question that was on everyone's mind, all coming from Iwa's support. Though, in my opinion, the unsung hero of the story is none other than Ozaki Jumbo. This dude has come in clutch time and time again. He of course fits the basic criteria of being a supporter, but also goes far beyond it. But most importantly, he provides her with critical insight that helps push her forward and often acts as a vital key for her growth. When Iwa refused to accept Akane's goals to be a Rakugoka, it was Jumbo that challenged Iwa on her behalf and convinced her to attend Akane's event, which once again led to the Karaku Cup. When Akane was struggling with learning fetching tea, not only did he go on a quote-unquote date with her, but he also was able to cut through Akane's overthinking to point out what she had missed. Her fetching tea being laughed at was a good thing, which is what led to Akane finally understanding the lesson, allowing Akane to get Urara's approval just in the nick of time. When Akane is struggling to learn how to perform Rakugo in her own words, the man comes in clutch again, reminding her of how she recounted the story of the infamous fake crying incident while essentially performing Rakugo, once again allowing her to learn her lesson and move forward. Jumbo is a big part of her success just from his care and willingness to help. Shiguma, Iwa, and Jumbo are some of her biggest supporters, but there are many other people who have helped or supported her in other or smaller ways too. Obviously, her parents supporting her dream to pursue performing arts as a career, even after that same career path didn't pan out so well for them in the past, is a very important piece of support. Not having to go behind their backs and knowing that they have hers is like an Athena's Divine Dash level boon. AKA, I would not have beaten that game without it. Having someone like Miss Yoshino allow her, a total unknown, to perform at her cafe. Her other friends from high school that I totally remember existed, giving her advice and helping her to relax. Or Miku and Hiragi, who have supported and taught her so many different things in so many different ways. Akane has progressed as far and as quickly as she has, due in no small part to those around her. She is where she is now, genuinely, because she has had individuals who have poured themselves into teaching and supporting her. However, that doesn't really seem to be limited to Akane at all. The world of Rakugo, at its core, is one of collaboration, support, teaching, and passing things on to the next generation. Countless times, characters show up and are very ready and willing to help or take someone under their wing. All throughout the story, Akane is also able to relatively quickly go out to find new people to teach her stories. Master Shiguma even says that that's one aspect of the Rakugo journey. I am only as familiar with Rakugo as the story of Akane Banashi has outlined, but it seems like an art form where everyone is there to support each other, everyone is there to teach each other, and everyone is there to preserve and elevate the art. The support and care that a master shows to a student can even go on to inspire that student to support others and help them grow. That collaborative spirit is crucial for the art, especially since Rakugo is an art form passed down verbally. The only one, or at least the main individual, who seems to be somewhat lacking in this spirit is Isho. There's nothing wrong with being selective, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to have high standards, but the way he chooses to act, at least from an outsider's perspective, seems to be antithetical to what that supportive Rakugo spirit is. I think his outlook closes off a lot of potential, because even for an American who has never heard of Rakugo before picking up this manga, I can see how important and valuable the support and teachings found within the world of Rakugo is, and how inspiring and entertaining both it and Rakugo can be.